Happy New Year, folks, and welcome back to my Friday Night SmackDown review for January 1st, 2021, the premiere episode of the Blue Brand in the new year. I am Graham G. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. As I talked about last week's Christmas episode was one of the best episodes of the show I have seen, I would say in some time, but I think it's more accurate to say in many years. And that might sound like a stretch, but I think of that show, I think of the wild card episode of SmackDown, the final one from 2016, as being among the best the Blue Brand has done, at least in the last 4 or 5 years. Like, they were that great of shows. Obviously, coming off a show like that, this show will not even come close. The rating obviously decreased dramatically. I didn't have a chance to talk about this last week. I actually recorded last week's review before, the ratings came out, about how it did over like 4 million viewers. I think at one point, maybe overall it did like over 3 million, well over 3 million. I forgot what the exact number was, but it was very impressive. And I also recorded it before the Brody Lee news came out about how he passed away that same night. I actually put up the video right when the news broke, late on Saturday, and I didn't have a chance to record it until Saturday afternoon, didn't have a chance to put it up until Saturday night. So, nonetheless, though, I thought this was a very good episode of SmackDown. Not must-see, but for a holiday show, I thought it was fine. Nothing worth going out of your way to check out. If you didn't watch the show live, you didn't really miss much. But as always, as is usually the case with SmackDown, there was some good wrestling, solid storyline progression, and effective hype for next week's show. We're going to see, I didn't have a chance to talk about this last week, but that Rollins, I think, was supposed to come back on the show. Seth Rollins, that is. And they also advertised Big E and Baron Corbin, King Corbin, whatever. We got that. We didn't get Seth Rollins on this show. Never explained why. WWE wasn't making a big deal about it, I don't think, on their social media. I thought they advertised it in like a commercial for SmackDown on Fox as soon as the show went off the air. They weren't really hyping it up all that much throughout the week on Twitter. So either something went wrong or they just delayed plans and you'll be back at the Rumble instead. I don't know. But speaking again, what I was going to get at as far as what's on tap for next week, they're advertising 2 championship matches: the Street Profits versus Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode, again for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. And I don't mean that as a bad thing. They've had, I think, 3 or 4 matches by this point. One in October, one in November, one in December, and now one in January. They've been very well spaced out. The matches have been usually pretty good, so I'm looking forward to that. And we're also getting, for the Intercontinental Championship, Big E versus Apollo Cruz. Big E threw out the open challenge. Cruz immediately accepted, following their defeat of Sami Zayn and King Corbin in tag team action. So that's what we're getting next week. To kick off this show, we had Kevin Owens interrupting Roman Reigns and Jey Uso. Paul Heyman was, of course, in the ring as well. Very good segment, pretty standard stuff from all involved. This is the best thing going on SmackDown right now. My only issue with the angle is that it feels like deja vu. Now, I'll get to it a little later on, but I feel like we see some of the same stuff with these guys week after week by this point. It's still great. The matches are still very good, but I do question continuing the feud if Owens has already lost twice to Roman Reigns. I understand why you would keep him in chase mode because Owens was screwed both times, but unless the end game is to get the belt on Kevin Owens, which I don't think it is, then I'm not really sure why they're continuing to book him like a complete loser, unless he's going to turn heel or something, which again, I don't get the sense that he will. So I just thought that was weird. But it was a good segment to kick off the show. Kevin Owens did demand that he get his hands on Jey Uso on the show, and asking you shall receive. They made Kevin Owens versus Jey Uso official for the main event later on in the night. We did get Big E versus King Corbin, albeit only for a few minutes. It was fine while it lasted, although it never really had a chance to be as good as it could have been. And Corbin gets a lot of shit, and he's not the most exciting in-ring performer, and the character just sucks. The King Corbin shit is just terrible. But in the ring, the guy can go. He can hang in there with some of the best, and Big E's not the greatest wrestler on the roster, but I think as a big man versus big man match, this could have been really good. Unfortunately, didn't really get the time. It was interrupted by Sami Zayn, who attacked Big E following his loss of the Intercontinental Championship last week, leading to an impromptu tag team match when Apollo Crews came to the aid of Big E, leading to Big E and Cruz knocking off the duo of Corbin and Zayn in tag team action. I guess the Corbin and Mysterio stuff was only a 1-week thing, or 2-week thing, I guess. They feuded for like 2 weeks. Corbin beat Murphy, and that was it. We have not seen Murphy or Ray or Dominic, I don't think, on the show since. I know the Mysterio family, or at least Ray anyway, was at TLC on the kickoff show. That was a couple of weeks ago. That wasn't that long ago, but we haven't seen any progression with that program at all on SmackDown itself, which is weird. So, like I said earlier, Big E and Cruz teaming up for the win did lead to Cruz accepting Big E's open challenge for next week. So he's going to challenge for the Intercontinental Championship on next week's show. Again, good match while it lasted. Cool to see Cruz back on the show. We haven't seen Cruz on SmackDown in a regular role at all yet. I know he did have a match against Sami Zayn for the Intercontinental Championship actually 2 months ago. And that match ended fairly quickly via countout, so there was no point to it. But yeah, it's cool to see him getting a shot. Obviously, he won't win, but Big E and Cruz is a fresh match as far as I know. And it should be cool to see them clash next week for the championship. Now, if we could just get back, Kalisto's not a priority, but he hasn't been on the show in a while. It would be cool to see him back on the show after he was kind of teasing a heel turn for a while there, towards the end of the Lucha House Party stuff a few months ago. But it would be cool to get Kalisto back on the show. Lars Sullivan, I understand, is not everyone's favorite, but he was building momentum for a while there before they abruptly took him off the show in November. I have no idea what the fuck is going on with that guy. And then obviously, above all else, Aleister Black. I mean, he has not been on the show literally at all since he moved to SmackDown. Maybe for a quick cameo in that first post-draft SmackDown in October. But other than that, I mean, the guy has been completely gone from SmackDown since moving there, which is just completely nonsensical to me. But we move along to the Riott Squad versus Natalya and Tamina. So the match itself was exactly what you would expect. Nothing memorable, fairly forgettable, blah, blah, blah. Billie Kay came out with Natalya and Tamina, ended up switching sides multiple times throughout the match, depending on who was in control, ended up siding with the Riott Squad and attempted to celebrate with them afterward, which I thought was really funny. Billie Kay is great in a role like this. In the ring, she is just abysmal, but as a character, I think she's very entertaining. And I've said this before, but I think Billie Kay would be best suited for a maybe not managerial role, but an assistant to a GM type role. A lot of people have said this, but making her the assistant to Adam Pearce, who is kind of like the de facto GM. They won't say that, but he essentially is the go-to be-all, end-all authority figure on Raw and SmackDown right now. Making her his assistant, I think, would be very entertaining. Just because in the ring, she doesn't really offer a ton. She's not the worst. I think Tamina's far worse than she is in the ring. But it's still not great. I don't give a fuck about Natalya. I don't give a fuck about Tamina. The Riott Squad winning is cool, but the only way any of this means anything is if they get a tag team title shot at some point. They didn't get one last week when the tag team champions came to SmackDown, which was weird. But hopefully at some point either they just challenge for the titles or they're actually the team to beat Flair and Asuka for the tag titles, which I would not be opposed to at all. So speaking of the women's division, we had another women's tag team match right after this. But before that, I completely missed this, by the way. So they cut to backstage. I think it was before the second women's tag team match. Bianca was backstage maybe with Sasha or doing an interview or something. And all of a sudden we see walking down the backstage the hallway, was Sonya Deville. And she didn't say anything, I don't think. We just saw her for a quick second. Again, I did not watch the show live. I watched it on delay. And I usually skip over all the commercials. So if it was right when they came back from commercial and before the tag team match, I probably missed it. I definitely missed it. I didn't see it until I saw it on social media later on in the night. But I think that's super cool. A lot of people have been kind of talking about Sonya lately, wondering where she's been. And obviously she took time off for the personal stuff after SummerSlam. But we were all kind of wondering when she would be back. And there was no explanation as to how she got her job back. Because remember, that Mandy Rose match, a lot of people might forget, was a loser leaves WWE match. And she lost. And they always fucking come back. She didn't actually lead the promotion, thankfully. But they got to explain why she is back, how she's returned. And obviously it's a television show. They want to make you waiting for more to find out what actually happened. The problem with WWE is that it's so inconsistent that I have no faith that they'll actually pay this off with a worthy explanation or a worthy endgame or an end goal in explaining how Sonya is back on the show. So I guess we'll wait until next week. If we don't find out next week, they clearly just have no explanation and they just don't care about explaining why she's back. But the bottom line is that she is back, and I think that's great. SmackDown's women's division, although they are significantly smaller than Raw's in terms of how many women they have on the show, it's actually really, really good right now. I mean, Bayley and Bianca are doing their thing. Carmella and Sasha has exceeded expectations. The Riott Squad are building momentum. Billie Kay is entertaining. I don't care about Natalya and Tamina, but they're kind of just there to take losses and shit like that. That's a pretty good crop of women. SmackDown has less women, but they have more women that matter than Raw does, which is really just I don't know, Asuka and Charlotte, barely even Asuka, just because their Raw Women's Championship reign has been a complete afterthought lately. But anyway, it's cool to see Sonya back. I think she fits into that division like a glove, and I think she and Sasha could be a great feud. It's not the feud I want to see at WrestleMania. I think Sonya and Sasha could kind of be the bridge between now and WrestleMania, and we can get, hopefully, Bianca as the Royal Rumble Women's winner, and then we can get Bianca and Sasha at WrestleMania. But Sonya going for the gold before then, and between those 2 points, I think it'd be a lot of fun, because Sonya was fucking killing it before she had to take time off. She was doing the best work of her career, hands down. And this is from a woman who does not have a shit ton of experience. Obviously, she's a former MMA fighter, but she's only been with WWE for 5 years now. And I know it's like, oh, if you've been here for 5 years, you would think you would improve. But I mean, look no further than Dana Brooke and Nia Jax. They're fucking terrible, and they've been here for a lot longer than fucking Sonya Deville. So it's actually really impressive that Sonya has gotten as good as she is as quickly as she has, specifically from a character standpoint. So I'm very interested to see why she's back and what she'll be doing next. But yeah, we did get Bayley and Carmella versus Sasha and Bianca. Good tag team match, action-packed. The finish came when Carmella pinned Sasha with her finisher out of nowhere. So they didn't announce anything, but I do assume we are getting Sasha and Carmella 2, or 3, I guess, because they had a match on SmackDown before TLC. For the SmackDown Women's Championship at some point in the near future, maybe even at the Royal Rumble pay-per-view itself. And listen, I'm all for it. I've never been the biggest Carmella fan, but I thought the TLC match they had, or the match they had at TLC rather, was actually really good. And Carmella looked good in defeat. She's been stepping up her game lately, both in the ring, as a character, on the mic. She's been a blast to watch. So I think a rematch is the right way to go. Obviously, Sasha still wins. But I'm all for another Carmella-Sasha match because they worked very well together that first time. We had the Street Profits, and this was easily the worst part of the show for me. And I love the Street Profits, but when they do, their comedy is very hit or miss. This felt like something that WWE obviously scripted out for them. It was called the New Year's Day Smoke-Tacular, where they had like a drum set in the ring, and they were just being goofy. Honestly, I don't even really remember much about it. It was that dumb of a segment. This was going nowhere fast until Ziggler and Roode became babyfaces instantly by crashing this god-awful segment and attacking Montez Ford specifically. They went after Angelo Dawkins, but Montez Ford, they took his leg, really beat it up with a chair, beat the fuck out of him. So I'm not sure if they're writing, I don't think they're writing off Montez because they're defending the SmackDown Tag Team titles next week. Maybe it's their way of explaining an out for the Profits if they lose, but I don't want to see them lose. I think the Profits, yeah, they've been champions consistently for so long now. I can see why people would say, oh, we need something new. But the thing with the Profits is that there's more teams for them to face and defend those titles against than Roode and Ziggler at this point. You can still do the Profits versus Cesaro and Nakamura at some point down the road. The real Mania match, in my opinion, I'm not sure if I said this last week or somewhere else, the Profits and the Usos is the match to do at WrestleMania. I have no idea where Jimmy is. He seemed to be on his way back in September, October. We have heard no update on him since then, so I'm not sure if he had another setback or what. He said he'd be back in January. It's January 3rd as I speak right now, so he should be back hopefully very soon. I was hoping he would come back at the end of the show to help out Jay. Unfortunately, we didn't get that. But, yeah. So, anyway, I think with the Profits and Usos, I think that should be the Mania match, which is why I would keep the belts on the Profits. There's no reason for them to drop the belts at this point. We got yet another tag team match. This was a very tag team heavy show. We got a tag team segment, and we had 3 tag team matches. Actually, 4 tag team matches. We had the first men's one, the 2 women's ones, the tag team segment, and then Bryan and Otis versus Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura. It was good. Bryan and Otis worked well together as partners. They had Chad Gable in their corner. They did some like hip thrust thing or something or whatever. I thought that was entertaining. The match itself was fun. You can never go wrong with having Nakamura, Cesaro, and Bryan in the ring, and Otis is good too. So, yeah, this was fun. It felt like filler. It felt like a weird transition because Bryan was the super serious, intense competitor a week ago, beat Jey Uso in this hard-fought match, declared himself for the Royal Rumble, wants Roman Reigns at WrestleMania, kind of established that on Talking Smack soon after the next day. And now this week he's doing comedy. And listen, I think Daniel Bryan comedy is great, but it just felt like an odd shift from one character narrative to another, literally within the span of a week for no reason. So I think they're just killing time with him until the Royal Rumble when he hopefully wins. I don't know why Bryan really opted to team with Otis in the first place. It's not like he has any association with him or Chad Gable in storyline, so I thought that was weird. But I can't complain about a good match, because this was fun. We got Kevin Owens and Jey Uso again in the main event, the third match I think these two have had in the last couple of months. Jey Uso won the first one. I think Kevin Owens either got DQ'd that second time, or I forgot exactly what happened, but they had another match about a month ago. They had their third match here. This was good stuff. My only nitpick with it was that they came back from commercial, and maybe this is a good thing because it was so out of the ordinary, but they came back from commercial, and unless I missed something, they came back from commercial, and Kevin Owens immediately won. He literally just hit the stunner, and it was over. And the match was over by like 9:51 p.m. Eastern time. I'm thinking, okay. Obviously, we're getting something after this, which we did. Kevin Owens proceeded to beat the fuck out of Jey Uso, and then before he could really get the upper hand over him, Roman Reigns came out. He came out, ambushed Kevin Owens, and then they threw him through a table off like one of the Thunderdome platforms, which was a cool visual. But the issue with this program, as I was alluding to earlier, Kevin Owens has to get the upper hand at some point. He has to give Roman and Jey Uso their comeuppance at least 1 week. I'm not saying that Owens has to take the title, nor should he. I love Kevin Owens. I just don't think now is the time for that. I just don't see... I don't know. I just don't understand why you would have Kevin Owens get the fuck beat out of him every single week. And I understand it's the narrative of the character where it's like, oh, he just has to keep fighting. He'll keep battling back until he wins the belt. But the thing is, he probably won't win the belt. And all they're doing is establishing him as a loser. That and the fact that he has no friends, which I get because he's turned on so many people. But you would think at least Daniel fucking Bryan would come out and think to himself, hey, I hate Roman too. And I know why they're not doing that. They want to save Bryan for the Rumble, or Roman and Bryan for another pay-per-view. But I just think that's fucking dumb. I don't know. I just thought that was stupid. But it was a good match. It was a good angle to close the show. I just continue to wonder why they're dragging this out with Roman and Jey in the driver's seat if they're just going to continue to beat the fuck out of him, and Jey Uso, or rather Kevin Owens, will get nothing out of it. So I'm not really sure. But overall, this was a good show. Not nearly as strong as last week's show. There was a bit more filler. They are moving things along nicely. Big E and Cruz and the tag title match. Both those title matches were set up effectively for next week. The Roman Reigns, Jey Uso, Paul Heyman, Kevin Owens saga continues to be the best thing on the show. The women's division is really doing well right now. Sonya being back in the mix is fantastic. Very happy about that. And then the only real filler match in the show, aside from the Riott Squad stuff, was Bryan and Otis versus Cesaro and Nakamura. But again, it was a good match, so it's hard to complain. No Seth Rollins, but it didn't really take away from what I thought was a good show. It was a solid, good addition to SmackDown. Not great, not must-see by any means, but it was enjoyable for what it was. And that's my review of the January 1st, 2021, I gotta get used to saying that, edition of Friday Night SmackDown. Thank you guys as always for checking out the content. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content, including hitting that bell button for more daily content. The video schedule has been messed up for days now just due to the holidays and whatnot. The WrestleRant radio excerpts went up late last night. I've had Dark Side of the Ring reviews going up that I didn't have a chance to publish in 2020. These videos, this and the Talking Smack review, are going up a day later. We should be back to normal tomorrow. I still have to watch and review the WWE Day of on TLC 2020, so that should be up tomorrow, in addition to my interview with WWE Raw superstar Keith Lee. So if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please check that out. And not the old one either. I think I uploaded the first one here to the channel a couple of months ago. This is a new one that we recorded last week before the new year, and it's going to be going live tomorrow before he faces Drew McIntyre on Raw Monday night for the WWE Championship. Have a very happy New Year, folks. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.